Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Here's a funny thing that we noticed the other day. People debate all the time about mass immigration. What you never hear anybody do is make the economic case for mass immigration. And here's why. Our country's economy is becoming more automated and tech-centered by the day. It's obvious that we need more scientists and skilled engineers, but that's not what we're getting. Instead, we're getting waves of people with high school educations or less. Nice people, no one doubts that, but as an economic matter, this is insane. It's indefensible, so nobody even tries to defend it. Instead, our leaders demand that you shut up and accept this. We have a moral obligation to admit the world's poor, they tell us, even if it makes our own country poorer and dirtier and more divided. Immigration is a form of atonement. Previous leaders of our country committed sins. We must pay for those sins by welcoming an endless chain of migrant caravans. That's the argument they make. If it sounds like something that some dopey sociology professor at Long Beach State thought up half drunk in the 70s, you're right. That's pretty much exactly what it is. And yet somehow the immigration as atonement idea has become the official position of virtually every guilty liberal in the United States. Our tech overlords, the ones always lecturing you, corporate America, Nancy Pelosi, and Paul Ryan. They all believe this. And anyone who disagrees with them is denounced as a bigot and fired. What's so amusing, though, is that nobody ever bothered to explain any of these rules to the people of Tijuana. Tijuana is in Mexico, which means they're Mexican citizens. And by academic definitions popular in this country, they must be oppressed. Nobody in the American left ever imagined that the people of Tijuana would display the classic symptoms of white privilege. And yet, when a caravan of Honduran immigrants showed up in their city uninvited, that's exactly what they did.
You know of incidences here in Tijuana and in other cities that some of these people that are coming into with these caravans are committing crimes. This is not about racism. We don't dislike a certain group of people because they're from one country or another. We are here because our government has not taken control of these, what we call invasion.
The country have to be beware of these people because they are people, they are bad people.
Well, it sounds like a Trump rally. When did Mexican citizens start talking like this? It's confusing, and of course, it's also deeply hilarious and pretty satisfying to watch. What's more predictable is how leaders of the caravan are starting to talk. Suddenly, they sound like community college professors from Long Beach, entitled, cut off from reality, and highly aggressive. Yesterday, a group of leaders of the caravan marched into the U.S. consulate in Mexico and demanded $50,000 in exchange for returning to their own countries. Huddled masses yearning to breathe free? Nope. Cynical shakedown artists who've been watching too much CNN. No surprise there. When rich liberals tell you that America owes you a comfortable life, nobody should be shocked when you believe them. Well, Genaro Lopez is a municipal official from Tijuana, an elected official. He's not a bigot. He's not suffering from white privilege or toxic masculinity. He's just a citizen who's upset about what is happening to the city he loves. He joins us from just across the border in Tijuana. Mr. Lopez, thank you for joining us. We in the United States were told that the migrant caravan would make our country better, would improve America. Has the migrant caravan made Tijuana better? What has been the effect of having the caravan in your city?
Hi, Tucker. Good afternoon from Tijuana. Things aren't getting better. They're probably getting worse. Last weekend, we issued an ultimatum to all the Hondurans and Guatemalans that are camping out here on the street. They're blocking the street and they're doing all their necessities, trashing the street. And we have a school closed here. This is the third week being closed, and they won't open until these guys leave. And we issued an ultimatum for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They had to go. Sunday, they will be removed by force. And a priest came here. He's very well known, Padre Solalinde, and he talked with them and said they shouldn't go, that they should stay, that he would talk to the federal authorities. So Sunday, the director of disaster relief from Mexico City, he issued an order to stop and don't remove them by force. So they're still here. Problems are still going on. There's been like 280 arrests. Before it was only for drug possession and being drunk in the streets. Now it's for breaking and entering into homes. People have even made citizens arrest of them. and things aren't very nice here, and the neighborhoods is tired of them, the merchants, and the schools.
So you've had home break-ins. Are you certain that it was migrant caravan members who broke into those homes?
Yeah, there's a video on Facebook, and in the video he says his name, and he says he's from Honduras.
How are the police handling
Also, we had well, police are on 24-hour alert on this, and they're worried about this because we don't want crime rate to go up here in Mexico. We are a very tourist town, and we live of tourism, and Christmas season is one of our best times for tourism here and for sales, and things aren't very good right now. Also, we don't want these migrants to make the U.S. nervous, and they had 2 marches this Sunday from the new shelter. They made a march to the U.S. consulate, and they delivered 2 letters. One was directed directly to President Donald Trump, and they were demanding that if they didn't get political asylum from the U.S., he should pay them $50,000 to go honorably back home. And also they were demanding that he should extradite President Juan Orlando Hernandez from Honduras to the United States, and he should remove 13 big military bases and big businesses from the United States that are in Honduras, and they're accusing them of depleting the Honduran economy.
So they're demanding money or they won't leave. That sounds like an extortion attempt.
Yeah. Sounds like a ransom, yeah. If you want them to go back, you have to give $50,000 to each one of them. But
so
like 700 have been, yeah.
I was just saying that the political leaders in the United States encouraged this caravan, and media figures, people on television in this country, encouraged the caravan to come north. Now they're in your city. What would you say to the politicians and media figures in the U.S. who encouraged them to come to Tijuana?
Well, Tijuana is a great town. It opens its arms to anyone who wants to come here in peace and to live here, no problem. But if you come here in a violent move, if you come here against our sovereignty, you're not welcome here. Really, we don't want these problems. We have our own problems, and we're dealing with them.
Yeah.
We don't want problems from other countries to start invading us here and creating all this havoc that has been happening.
Yeah, closed schools, people living in the street, home invasions. I can see why. Our heart goes out to you, Mr. Lopez. Thank you very much for that update tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Immigration used to be considered a matter of policy, and people debated it on those terms. Now, increasingly, the question is framed in theological terms. One of America's great moral leaders, Nancy Pelosi, does that. Here's an example.
Most of us, speaking for myself, consider the wall immoral, ineffective. He also promised Mexico would pay for it. So even if they did, it's immoral still.
Minerva Carcano is a bishop in the United Methodist Church. She traveled to the border to protest the plight of the migrants there, and she joins us tonight. Bishop, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you saw the interview we just did with Mr. Lopez as an elected municipal leader in Tijuana, but he described a scene, and we had pictures of it, where hundreds, thousands of migrants are living in the open air, and the city of Tijuana is being very disrupted by this. Schools have closed, many arrests have been made. For some, in cases, serious crimes. He said that recently religious leaders came to the migrant encampment and encouraged the migrants to stay living in tents in the middle of Tijuana. And I wonder what you make of that as a religious leader yourself.
I'm aware of the fact that religious leaders, among them Methodists from the Methodist Church of Mexico, have been compassionately feeding these migrants. I've seen these migrants. I know their plight. They are migrants who have left their homes, not because they wanted to leave their homes, but because they face poverty and great violence. Mm-hmm. And so they've migrated. They have a right to migrate. They have a right to asylum at the border, to receive due process for asylum. These are people who need humanity to extend compassion to them and love and care. It may discomfort some, but this is a moment in which we can show the best of humanity. I'm not aware of what was just described. You showed pictures. I was not able to see them, but I am aware of the plight of the migrants.
Right, and so are we. And I think that our heart goes out to anybody who walks a great distance to get a better life. And I've always assumed that most migrants are decent people. But there's a huge cost, not to the Methodist Church, but to the taxpayers of Tijuana and the United States, to every person who comes here in poverty with low skills. Some estimates suggest the cost is hundreds of thousands per immigrant over a lifetime. The Methodist Church is not paying that bill. U.S. taxpayers are. So I wonder if that's a factor in your consideration. Shouldn't you be paying for the people that you encourage to come here? Why aren't you?
Migrants aren't costing this country in the way that you describe. These migrants who come to this country are contributing to our society, actually are contributing to the economic base. Many of them are paying into our Social Security. They don't benefit from that Social Security money that they're contributing. Many of them are working 2 and 3 jobs. I've lived and served in Texas and all across the Southwest and the West, and these folks contribute more, much more than they receive from our country, from our state, and from our communities. But hold on.
And as a mathematical question, that's not true. And I think there's a great moral contribution of poor immigrants. I'm not attacking them personally. I hold no animus toward them. But a lot of study has been done on this, and people who come to this country with less than a high school education take more services by a huge margin than they pay into the system. Now, you don't pay any taxes in your church because you have a tax exemption. The rest of us work for companies that do pay taxes. We pay taxes, so we're supporting the policies that you're encouraging. And I wonder why it's virtuous of you to do that. If you are encouraging people to come here, why don't you have an obligation to provide them education, housing, food, medical care? But you offload that onto taxpayers. And I wonder why that's a Christian thing to do.
Every single United Methodist pays taxes in the United States. And so this is kind of
does not. You have a tax
way
exemption.
to skew the conversation. Every single United Methodist member of our churches pays taxes. These are people who pay into our system, and they contribute to the economic viability of our country. I live and serve in the state of California. The economic agricultural base of California would just diminish, if not be totally undermined, if it weren't for these migrants who are coming
but hold on,
and assuming jobs,
since you're a person of God,
that people in this country won't take on because they feel it's beneath them and beneath their efforts.
Okay, so you're on the side of employers who want to pay third world wages to their workers. That's where you are in this question. But I want to ask you a theological question, because you're not an economist. Of course you are. You're on the side
who are willing to pay less to these
big
persons.
agricultural companies that want to hire people for less.
The economic studies I'm reading are different from the ones that you are quoting.
But let me ask you a theological question, because that is your area of expertise. If I force you to put money in the collection plate in my name, which is what you're doing with U.S. taxpayers, do I get the credit from God for donating to the church? In other words, why don't you, as a church, make certain that every person you encourage to come here is fed and housed and educated and healed at your expense? How can you feel virtuous when you're not paying for the things that you're encouraging? I don't understand. How does that work?
First of all, we're not encouraging people to come.
Yes,
we're trying to help them stay. No, we're not. But when they come because they've hit a desperate place in their lives, we're going to care for them. We're going to seek justice for them. We're going to ask for...
You're going to care for them. Do you pay for their medical expenses? Any of them? I don't think you do.
You know, we do. We do. We
really?
care
You do?
for
How
their
much
food.
do you spend a year on that?
We care for their housing. We care for their care. We spend millions of dollars as United Methodists, and we're not the only ones. The Catholic Church...
American taxpayers spend $135 billion on this. I think that's more than... Look, I'm just saying, if you're going to encourage people to come in here, I think you should pitch in a little bit more than you are, and then you can call it virtue.
We do pitch in to care for them in ways beyond your understanding, and we do so out of a sense of justice.
Okay. Bishop, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, CNN, watching the Democratic primaries long before they begin, has a new litmus test. White men need not apply in 2020 to run for the Democratic nomination. Is that a good test? We'll tell you after the break. Well, the federal judge in charge of sentencing former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is now taking a very close look at the way the government handled Flynn's case. You'll remember that Flynn pleaded guilty to one count of lying to federal authorities. Now his lawyers say that the FBI actively encouraged Flynn not to bring an attorney to the fateful interview he did with agents at the White House right after the inauguration. The judge in question ordered Mueller to hand over documents related to that interview. Why is the question? The Federalist Molly Hemingway has been covering the story from day one, and she joins us tonight. So why is the judge sounds suspicious that this was not handled appropriately?
Emmett Sullivan has a reputation for wanting to know that the government has done everything by the book. He was the judge who had problems with the Ted Stevens prosecution.
Right.
And I think there's reason to be suspicious about what happened here. I mean, nothing seems to have been done in the way that you would hope that the Justice Department would be doing things if they wanted to hold everyone equally accountable to the law. I mean, one of the things that hasn't even been brought up here that I think is interesting is they leaked to the Washington Post the day before they went to interview him that he was totally out of trouble. And I think it sounds kind of suspicious that they were doing this on the eve of calling him up and saying, hey, do you mind if we come over and talk to you? Because it made him feel like this was not a perjury trap, that this was not an investigation into him. In fact, they had been actually surveilling him for years, and they were definitely trying to ring him up on a perjury trap. So it's very important to make sure that they did you can have a problem already with how they did things. If they weren't dotting their I's and crossing their T's, and it looks like they might not have been, this judge might not take it.
So
well.
there have been reports, about a lot of things, and sometimes it's hard to sort through and determine which are true or not. But that the agents who interviewed Flynn at the White House without his lawyer, who actually did the interview, believed he did not commit perjury.
We've already had FBI officials admit that the agents who interviewed him did not think that he was lying. And what's interesting about this judge's order is he wants to know about the paperwork they filed 7 months later. Now, usually when an FBI agent interviews someone, they file paperwork right away. In this case, one of the agents was Peter Strzok, who was later removed from the special counsel probe because of his extreme partisan bias. So they had to redo their paperwork. And so he ends up pleading guilty to lying based on paperwork that was 7 months old.
Do we know why the feds were surveilling General Flynn for years?
We don't know exactly why they were doing it. What we do know is that a previous leak was used to continue that surveillance. So they were about to close out the surveillance of him because they hadn't found him doing anything wrong. Well, then they leaked to the Washington Post, again, to a friendly reporter, that he might have committed a Logan Act violation. That was absurd, but it was enough to keep the surveillance going, enough to keep the investigation going. Now, at the end of the day, after years of surveillance, after being told that he was the centerpiece of treason with Russia, he ends up pleading that he lied about a statement to the FBI. That is a huge walk down from what we were promised at the outset.
That he committed a crime, in other words, that arose from the investigation itself.
The investigation created its own crime, yes.
Amazing. Molly Hemingway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, over at CNN, they are offering free advice to the Democratic Party. If you want to win in 2020, don't nominate a man, and especially don't nominate a white man. Watch.
I will point out, though, another white male. I'm very suspect of that this year going into a Democratic primary with women doing well in the African-American base of the Democratic Party. I'm not sure it's the time to nominate a white man.
Now, obviously, that's the dumbest channel on TV, so we could dismiss it. But why dismiss it? Let's take it seriously. Julian Epstein is a Democrat. He once served as chief counsel on the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us tonight. So when I first saw this, I thought, just more moronic blather on CNN. But then I thought, it's actually not a crazy point. This is a party that is openly kind of out of the closet hostile to white men. They say it all the time, from Pelosi on down. So actually, how can the Democratic Party nominate a white man in 2020? Seriously.
I mean, well, in fairness to CNN, that was one commentator. I don't know that reflects the view of CNN. I think that's a silly thing to say. I think it's the idea of a litmus test, whether it's gender or race, is completely un-American. I also think it's dumb politics.
I hope it's un-American to judge people on their immutable characteristics. You're going to have a tough time in the Democratic Party right now. I think
so. I think there's some. Maybe that may be true for certain Democrats, but I don't think it's true for all. And look, I mean, I think, it would be wonderful to have a woman as president. Indira Gandhi was great for India. Golda Meir was great for
Indira Gandhi.
Golda Meir was great for Israel. Margaret Thatcher, I didn't like her politics, was great for the UK.
Yeah.
But I think voters are going to go into this, with all due respect to our friend from CNN, with a little bit more intelligence. I think they're going to look for someone who has, and one thing that Trump taught us is the importance of a strong, big personality. I think that's important.
But hold on. This is, I mean, and by the way, I'm on your side. I agree with you completely. I think you should judge people on what they believe and what they do, not on things they can't control like their sex or their race. But up and down the party, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won that congressional seat in part because she said there's a white guy holding a seat in a district that's not majority white guy. Don't vote for him. I mean, this is a central belief in the Democratic Party 2018. So honestly, how could you have Joe Biden, for example?
See if we can agree on this point. Both parties are guilty of playing the identity politics game. I mean, that happens on the political right and it happens on the political left.
Have you ever heard a Republican running for office who said, do not vote for my opponent because the opponent is the wrong color? I've never heard that.
I don't know, and I don't know that Democrats have said that.
Ocasio-Cortez said that.
And I don't know the particular quote you're speaking about, but I don't think it reflects the mainstream thinking inside the Democratic Party. I think, look, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton won the White House because they were able to, they had strong personalities, they were young, exciting candidates, they were able to speak to the middle class. It's been in recession for 30 years. They were from completely different backgrounds and different races. I mean, I think the intelligent people in both parties don't think about playing the race card.
I hope you're right.
They don't think about using, necessarily immigration as dog whistle. There's all kinds of ways that you can play identity politics.
But do you think?
And I don't think it's good for the country, and I don't think it's smart politics
it's terrible
anymore.
For the country. Actually.
But I don't think it's smart politics. I do think it happens on both sides. I think it's bad politics.
Well, it's certainly explicit on the Democratic side. Do you really think if Mitch Landrieu winds up the nominee? And
I love.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Hasn't made that city better, but whatever.
Well,
he's a nice guy.
We can have that conversation.
But if Mitch Landrieu's a nominee, people are going to say, you know what? We don't care that he's a white guy. I just don't believe that. I hope you're right.
I hope we're at the point where voters, Democratic voters and independent voters are looking at who the candidate is, what kind of excitement they bring. Are they speaking to the middle class? Are they speaking to the major problems we have? The China problem, which you and I have discussed.
You're going to need to switch parties. Julian Epstein, wait till
Are they talking about things that people...
Look, I agree with you, but I just don't see any evidence that you're right.
The bases in both political parties, the base in the Republican Party is probably 15% of all voters. Base in the Democratic Party, probably 15% of all voters. That means there's 70% who are pragmatic, practical,
if we can get beyond
solutions.
the bean counting in this election, it will be a great service to the country, I think. Thank you very much.
Okay, good to see you.
Thank you. You too. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel is betting the city's fortunes on getting more of his own people addicted to gambling and drugs. That's the answer to the fiscal crisis. Moron. More on that after the break. Bills, but Mayor Rahm Emanuel has a plan, one that entails destroying the lives of its own citizens. Mark Stein is standing by to react to that plan. But first, speaking of Chicago, we have an exclusive investigation tonight into that city. Some parts of it are essentially war zones right now, as you know. Nearly 3,000 people have been shot in Chicago so far this year. Almost 500 are dead. These levels of violence are matched by third world style governance, too. Police officers in Chicago are worried that one judge there may be helping criminals get away with murder. We asked Fox News' Matt Finn to investigate.
A brazen 2011 quadruple homicide caught on tape. 4 men walk into a convenience store on Chicago's South Side and open fire. A bloodbath killing 4 people, including one of the suspects. A Chicago law enforcement source tells Fox News, in addition to this shocking video, there was, quote, more than enough physical, biological, and firearms evidence to convict the suspects. Yet all 3 were found not guilty. In her ruling, Judge Carol Howard wrote that the tape did not definitively ID any of the suspects, and that there was no DNA evidence linking the defendants to the crime scene. We spoke to Rod Drabinski, a former Chicago area prosecutor. He had the opportunity to speak to law enforcement officials involved with this trial.
There was gunshot residue, other aspects of DNA evidence that were pulled off from the crime scene. When Judge Howard made her ruling, she did it in writing, and most of those aspects were either explained away in a rather unusual way or not mentioned at all.
In a statement to Fox News, Michael Clancy, an attorney for one of the defendants in that video, wrote that any judge would have agreed with Howard, writing in part, "There was no physical evidence linking Eric to the scene. The store video showed masked offenders that did not even suggest Eric. There is no way Judge Howard or any judge could find him guilty based on those facts." This decision from Howard, however, is not an outlier. Multiple sources tell us that Judge Howard is known for being lenient, and prosecutors came up with the nickname Set Them Free 203 in honor of her courtroom, room 203. Judge Howard did not respond to Fox News' multiple requests for comment. Police sources pointed us to another case for an example of Howard's questionable decision-making, a 2014 shooting of a Chicago police officer. According to police, James Garland confessed to firing a shot when police officer Thomas Derwin knocked and then forcibly entered a house to execute a search warrant. Just one shot was fired during that police raid. Garland admitted, quote, "It is my fault," and gunshot residue was found on him. However, Judge Howard found Garland not guilty. She granted the defense's motion to suppress parts of Garland's confession. The defense claimed Garland did not receive his Miranda rights, although the police report notes Garland was read them. Howard's judgment has even been criticized before on the record by the local DA's office. In 2017, she acquitted a man she earlier found guilty of murder and arson charges. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office wrote, quote, "We are disturbed by the court's decision."
It's pretty apparent that Judge Howard has a pro-defense slant. You know, we have a lot of violence on the streets, and the fact that we have defendants being found not guilty where there's a volume of evidence against them is concerning.
Tucker, we know that judges typically do not speak publicly about their rulings, but for more than 6 months we submitted requests to Judge Howard to talk to us about these cases, and perhaps if she agreed, she could have shed some light on her rulings. And we are not just singling out Judge Howard. There are similar judges and district attorneys here in Chicago and across this country that are allegedly soft on criminals and hard on the state. In fact, the district attorney that was just elected in Boston, Suffolk County, has an extensive list of crimes she plans not to prosecute, including shoplifting and drug possession with intent to distribute. Tucker.
Yeah. Probably not going to make the crime rate go down. Matt, thanks for that report. Were you able to talk to prosecutors?
You know, I reached out to 2 prosecutors in that quadruple homicide. I got one of them on the phone. It sounded like he wanted to talk to us, but he ended up not commenting, Tucker.
Yeah, everyone's afraid. Matt Finn, thanks very much for that.
Sure.
City of Chicago, great place. Also, though, as you just heard, famous for crime, corruption, and mismanagement, all the usual things associated with decades of one-party Democratic rule. Now the city's completely out of money. It cannot afford to pay the promises it has made to its public sector employees. The crushing pension debt is not new, though. It's something that Mayor Rahm Emanuel knew about when he took office. He knew exactly how not to deal with it in 2014. Listen.
I do not think you should balance the budget by promoting recreational smoking of pot.
Yeah, you shouldn't get rich off the addictions of your own people. You wouldn't do that to your kids. Don't do it to your city. But now Emanuel has completely reversed course and decided the best way to balance the budget is to legalize marijuana and open up a casino. Mark Stein is not an accountant or a budget director, but he is a best-selling author, a frequent guest on this show, and we are happy to have him tonight. So, Mark, just as a philosophical matter, are our leaders supposed to be profiting from our addictions?
Not in a healthy society. But I've always thought, Tucker, that George Orwell's 1984 is the most popular dystopian novel, but that actually Aldous Huxley's Brave New World is a more accurate predictor of where we're going, where basically you get the masses hooked on sensual pleasures and thereby keep them quiet, keep them calm, keep them compliant with all the things you're trying to do. These are public sector pensions here, which are in the Illinois state constitution, that you can't do anything to reduce them. That's been in the Constitution of Illinois since 1970. It shouldn't be in the Constitution at all. It's not the proper province of constitutions to protect the public pensions of state workers. And so we have a situation where there'll be somebody living at 27 Elm Street, who retires as a public school teacher in her 50s. And at 29 Elm Street, there'll be a hardware store proprietor who's got to work into his 80s until he drops dead to support the pension of the lady next door. And there aren't enough of those people. So now we've got an even more aggressive tax where they're going to use pot and gambling and the weaknesses of the poor to fund the permanent bureaucracy. And this in a city that, as you point out, already has corruption and crime and murder and death on an incredible scale.
It's a disgusting mistreatment of his own people. It's really wrong. Mark Stein, thank you very much. Great to see you. Final exams coming up. Can you beat the news professionals at remembering what actually happened last week? Really a test of your short-term memory. See how you do after the break.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Oh, the best 8 minutes of the week. Time now for Final Exam, where we pit, as you know, two hardened news experts against one another to see who's been paying the closest attention to what's happened this week. Tonight, a contest between two icons, Fox News correspondents Lauren Blanchard and Peter Doocy. Both have been here before. Both know the rules. How do you feel?
Well, last time I was here, I played Peter, and he won in sudden death, so...
I didn't want to bring that up, yeah.
Well,
I'm trying to redeem myself.
It was a close win. We'll see if that happens again. Here are the rules. Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You must wait until I finish asking it in order to answer. Once I acknowledge your name, you can answer the question. Each correct answer worth 1 point. Each incorrect subtracts a point from your total score. Best of 5 wins. Are you prepared?
Let's do it.
All right, question 1. Which United States senator stunned the country he represents this past week when he unveiled an impressive multicolored beard? Ooh, Lauren.
It's Ted Cruz.
Whoa, you were fast on that.
I don't know how I feel about
Ted Cruz's beard. Roll tape, please.
Texas Senator.
Yeah.
Whoa, we got the new beard thing going on. I didn't know you had that. Ted Cruz is with us. Good to see you. I'm getting used to the new look. If it gets a little whiter and longer, next year you can be Santa Claus. You have a ways to go.
Ho, ho, ho.
Boy, that was a showstopper. Sean was stunned by that. I was too. Fair enough. All right. First goes to Lauren. Question 2. This is multiple choice. There is officially nothing left to tax unless you live in the state of California. Lawmakers there say they're working on a brand new tax involving one of the following. Is it A, pets, B, tattoos, C, text messages? Peter Doocy.
It is C, text messages.
You don't think it's pets or tattoos?
I know less about pets and ink than I do about.
All right, well, let's see if you're right. Is it text messages?
State regulators in California are considering a tax on text messaging. It's not clear how much the charge would be, but it'd likely be a flat charge per customer.
The millennial tax, they're calling it.
You know, a lot of young people don't really text. They're all in the apps. WhatsApp, Tucker.
Yeah, I guess that's right. That'll be next. All right, question 3. Which two-time MVP basketball player managed to upset NASA and the global space community when he said you must finish the question before answering it?
I would like to hear the rest of the question.
He said that humans have never made it to the moon.
Who? It's Steph Curry.
What? Did you know that? Oh, I hate to see you
feel like she did.
Let's see if it is Steph Curry. Did Steph Curry doubt the moon landing?
Basketball superstar Steph Curry making news off the court.
Just
we ever been to the moon?
About it.
Nope. They're going to come get us. I don't think so either. Sorry, I don't want to start a conspiracy.
We would love for Mr. Curry to tour the lunar lab at our Johnson Space Center in Houston. We have hundreds of pounds of moon rocks stored there.
But he came out and said that it was a misunderstanding.
Right.
You know, I think the moon landing was real, but I also remember when they told us when I was a kid that eating carbs made you thin. So I think it's fair to kind of doubt the official story on things once in a while.
Is this a...
I don't know. No, I believe in the moon landing, just to be clear, but I don't know. It's okay to say, as he did. Okay, question 4. Delta, the airline, says it is banning what from flights due to an 84% increase in incidents involving biting and urination? Peter Doocy.
It is service animals on long-term flights.
So they're the ones biting and urinating?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they might not be the only ones.
Yeah, probably not. Let's check the tape.
Delta banning all emotional support animals on flights 8 hours or longer. Some accidents happen, biting, attacking other passengers, so they are making the change.
Was that?
Did you see the squirrel?
We have a particularly harsh judgment now from the judges, and I hesitate. Look, and I just want you to know, I'm merely a marionette taking orders from my corporate masters
What is
in New
the
York
harsh
City.
judgment?
And they're saying that is technically incorrect. They're not penalizing you, but they're not granting you the point.
Which part was incorrect?
It's emotional support animals.
As opposed to...
Support, they're different.
As opposed to judges, as opposed to what Peter said.
Well, fine. I will concede that 1 point.
Peter was not precise, they're saying. Boy, they are harsh. You're still in the lead, 2-1.
Okay.
Final question. Now, the National Game Show Commission, which oversees this program, would like us to end on another multiple choice question. So please pay close attention to the options. Universal Music has just announced that the most streamed song of the 20th century, with 1.6 billion streams, is A, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, Thriller by Michael Jackson, which is B, or C, Elton John's Candle in the Wind.
It's Bohemian Rhapsody, and I know that because my parents made me play it.
You're going to have to sing it if that's your answer. You're going to have to sing it from the
Okay,
top.
so Lauren says it's Bohemian Rhapsody. Is it?
Bohemian Rhapsody is the most streamed classic rock song from the 20th century. There's also been a surge in neck injuries from middle-aged headbangers singing the song in their cars.
For the record, by the way, our judges just are clarifying. You said service animal and emotional support animals are different from service animals. Service animals are for, say, the blind.
Understood. Thank you.
This is tense. Okay, so it's 2-2. Again, we find ourselves where we found ourselves last time, in sudden death. It'll be settled by a bonus question. This question is multiple choice. What is the best-selling album, musical album in American history? Is it A, Thriller by Michael Jackson, B, The Eagles' Greatest Hits, or C, Yellow Submarine by the Beatles? Lauren.
Okay, this is going to be a shout out to my parents because they made us listen to Eagles so much, so I'm going with Eagles.
You're going with Eagles. Desperados on that album. That is correct. The Eagles' Greatest Hits, 38 million copies. Michael Jackson second place with 33 million.
Your parents should get the mug.
Unbelievable. Congratulations. Okay, so we're going to award you something that's become kind of coveted. This is the Eric Wempel mug. He works at Jeff Bezos' website. He was once on our show. I was walking through an airport, by the way, in Florida, and one of his relatives came up to me and asked to send this mug to her because she has.
You don't just have one on you?
No, I didn't. We just. And by the way, and can I just say, since it's Christmas, we're celebrating. I want to put a picture on the screen. This is our tree in our newsroom back in New York. You'll notice it is capped off with Eric Wempel himself. And that's the quickest way to bring Christmas cheer to our office. Anyway, please.
That's what the season's all
drink
about.
Coffee in that and think of us and Eric. His greatest congratulations.
Thank you.
Peter Ducey, you're a great competitor. There's no question in my mind you'll be back.
I failed.
That's it for Final Exam this week. Pay attention to the news each week. Tune in Thursdays to see if you can beat the news professionals. We'll be right back. Thank you, guys. Oh, the best 8 minutes of the week. Time now for Final Exam, where we pit, as you know, two hardened news experts against one another to see who's been paying the closest attention to what's happened this week. Tonight, a contest between two icons, Fox News correspondents Lauren Blanchard and Peter Ducey. Both have been here before. Both know the rules. How do you feel?
Well, last time I was here, I played Peter, and he won in sudden death. So
I didn't want to bring that up. Yeah,
I'm trying to redeem myself.
It was a close win. We'll see if that happens again. Here are the rules. Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You must wait until I finish asking it in order to answer. Once I acknowledge your name, you can answer the question. Each correct answer worth 1 point. Each incorrect subtracts a point from your total score. Best of 5 wins. Are you prepared?
Let's do it.
All right, question 1. Which United States senator stunned the country he represents this past week when he unveiled an impressive multicolored beard? Ooh, Lauren.
It's Ted Cruz.
Whoa, you were fast on that.
I don't know how I feel about
Ted Cruz's beard. Roll tape, please.
Texas Senator.
Yeah.
Whoa, we got the new beard thing going on. I didn't know you had that. Ted Cruz is with us. Good to see you. I'm getting used to the new look. If it gets a little whiter and longer, next year you can be Santa Claus. You have a ways to go.
Ho, ho, ho.
Boy, that was a showstopper. Sean was stunned by that. I was too. Fair enough. All right. First goes to Lauren. Question 2. This is multiple choice. There is officially nothing left to tax unless you live in the state of California. Lawmakers there say they're working on a brand new tax involving one of the following. Is it A, pets, B, tattoos, C, text messages? Peter Ducey.
It is C, text messages.
You don't think it's pets or tattoos?
I know less about pets and ink than I do about.
All right. Well, let's see if you're right. Is it text messages?
State regulators in California are considering a tax on text messaging. It's not clear how much the charge would be, but it'd likely be a flat charge per customer.
The millennial tax, they're calling it.
You know, a lot of young people don't really text. They're all in the apps. WhatsApp, Tucker.
Yeah, I guess that's right. That'll be next. All right, question 3. Which 2-time MVP basketball player managed to upset NASA and the global space community when he said you must finish the question before answering it?
I would like to hear the rest of the question.
He said that humans have never made it to the moon.
Who? It's Steph Curry.
What? Did you know that? Oh, I hate to see you
feel like she did.
Let's see if it is Steph Curry. Did Steph Curry doubt the moon landing?
Basketball superstar Steph Curry making news off the court.
We ever been to the moon?
About it.
Nope. They're going to come get us. I don't think so either. Sorry, I don't want to start a conspiracy.
We would love for Mr. Curry to tour the lunar lab at our Johnson Space Center in Houston. We have hundreds of